Welcome to the Fancy a Brew podcast. I'm Andy the Northern Diver. In this series I'll be discussing adventure, conservation and progression in scuba diving with some really interesting and inspirational divers that you might or not have heard of. The podcast is supported by Northern Diver International and you the listener through Patreon. So grab yourself a brew and enjoy this week's episode. Ollie Putnam, welcome to Fancy a Brew podcast. How's it going, mate? Have you got a brew?
I've got a brew, yep. Thanks for having me on, mate.
It's all right. So if you want to give us a little bit of an intro to who you are, not too many spoilers obviously, because I don't want to give every bit of the game away, and then we'll have a chat for an hour or so, see how we get on.
Yeah,
sure.
Said
welcome. I should have said welcome back, shouldn't I? Because you've been on before.
Yeah, I was on with Jake and Lloyd as a group, talking about what we've been doing over in Wales over the summer. But yeah, a few other things to talk about now, stuff I've done before that. So
yeah, so go on then, give us a bit of an intro.
So I guess so a little bit about me. So at the moment I'm working as a underwater cameraman, safety diver here in the UK. Obviously HSE diver to be able to do that. But before that, I've worked as a dive instructor in Australia and Asia for quite a few years, and got involved in a lot of marine conservation projects and stuff as well along the way, which has sort of grown, and developed my interest in filming stuff underwater to be able to then show it to other people in whatever format that comes out in.
Awesome. Was that always a dream then when you were at school? That's what I'm going to do.
No, not really. I mean, I always loved watching the wildlife documentaries and stuff on TV, especially underwater stuff. For me, I've sort of got into it more through the diving first. So when I was younger, I did a lot of swimming. I did like competitive swimming and stuff like that. And go on holidays. I was very lucky. My parents, were able to take us to a few nice places. So going on holiday and getting in the ocean, for me, it was all about, swimming, being in the water, whatever we were doing. But I was always interested in what was under the water. That was, the most interesting thing to me. So I always had to have a pair of goggles or a mask or something wherever we were, so I could try and see what there was. But then actually filming underwater, I didn't really get into until quite a bit later on. When I was 18, I sort of went traveling to Australia with a couple of mates, and that was probably the first time, I think, other than maybe like a tri dive at a swimming pool back home, that was the first time I'd properly gone scuba diving, and that was on the Barrier Reef. Classic place to do it as part of your sort of 3 months of backpacking up the east coast of Australia, and absolutely loved it from that first moment, and just felt pretty natural to me. And obviously it was even easier to then see all the stuff that was underwater. So that stuck in my mind. And a couple of years later, I went back to Australia, sort of to work and travel around for a couple of years. And one of the first things I did when I got back there, as I was sort of traveling around and working in different places, was to do my open water course. I did that up in Exmouth, north of the west coast of Australia, where it got Ningaloo Reef. Oh, yeah. So really amazing place to do that for your diving. And then I think within the first month after I'd done my open water course, I'd then done my advanced, done my rescue course, and was just, getting out diving there whenever I could in between work. So that and seeing all the guys working at the dive centers and stuff there, and dive masters on the boats and stuff, that sort of put in my mind, oh, maybe I can do that. I want to do that. So a couple of months later, I ended up over in Cairns and signed up for my dive master course there. So I paid to do my dive master course, but actually then once I'd done that, I got on it's an instructor training program. So basically it's just a way to pay for your instructor course. So you work for 3 months as a dive master, and that pays for your instructor course. So it may not be the most cost-effective way of doing it, but it was great for the experience of working on the big dive boats out there with, you know, a lot of tourists, got a lot of dives in, and obviously being technically still a backpacker without that much money, it was a good way to pay for that just with my time. So, and then very luckily they then offered me a job, the same company, the day after I passed my instructor course, and worked for them for quite a while after that. Mostly stuff out of Cairns on the barrier reef, sort of close to there, but I also got to work on some of the liveaboards that did the longer trips up to like the northern barrier reef and out into the Coral Sea. And there's one specific place, out a place called Osprey Reef, where they do like a shark feed, and that, I don't know, for me, one of the great things about being underwater and what I was always looking for was sharks. That was, you know, everything else was interesting, and I'm probably not the only person that says this, but sharks were just like, you know, the top thing for me to see. So, and by that point, you know, I obviously managed to see a few sharks already. I'd seen whale sharks over on the Ningaloo Reef when I was over there, which was pretty amazing. And then obviously the inner barrier reef there, you get the mostly just sort of reef sharks, white tip reef sharks on the reefs, grey reef sharks, and then out where we did this shark feed, you started to get some more interesting sharks, some slightly bigger ones. I think probably the coolest one I saw out there was oceanic white tip. They never used to come into the feed, but they were always sort of hanging around a little bit further out from the reef. But yeah, they were absolutely amazing to see. So,
you know, I think a weird thing is like if you wanted to see like lions and tigers and that kind of thing being fed at the zoo, you're quite comfortably behind barriers and cages and all that, because it's quite dangerous, isn't it? If you want to go and see sharks being fed, you just go and get in with them. You know, because you just can't really go and see them anywhere else.
No, you can't really. I mean, you can go and see them in an aquarium, I suppose, but you know, that's a bit different, isn't it? So, but actually, getting up close and personal, you do really just sort of get thrown in the deep end, I suppose, a little bit with it. I mean, the feeding dives we ran there were pretty controlled, and everyone was kept pretty far back. And there was just a sort of big dustbin that was in the middle, which you know, you got everyone settled down on the reef, and then popped this dustbin open, and the sort of bait came out the top of it on a float, and all the sharks would go into that. So you were never very, very close to them there. But they would, you know, swim through you and over the top of you to get to it. So, wow. But yeah.
I've yet to experience that, but we'll still see. There's time. Did you end up in South Africa then after that? Yeah,
so it took a little while after that to end up in South Africa. I ended up then, after Australia, going over to Asia to work for a few years in Thailand and Malaysia. I ran a dive, small dive center at a resort there on Tioman Island, and then did that for a few years, and then decided to come back to the UK because, as much as I loved teaching diving, it only ever really allowed you to sort of stay where you were. I could never really earn enough to then go off and do other things. And it wasn't that I was getting bored with it. I absolutely loved it, but you know, I just wanted to try and explore a few other things as well. So I ended up coming back to the UK. At that point, I sort of, you know, started doing a bit of work here and saving up a bit of money to go on different trips. Tried going to university for a year and a half, studying international business management, sort of thinking, oh, maybe I can then get back into the diving, but sort of managing bigger resorts, that sort of thing. Really struggled with that. I was okay at school, but unless something is really interesting to me, I sort of tend to lose interest a bit. But yeah, so I ended up sort of finishing doing that, and then I was thinking, right, what can I do now? And one of my friends, Matt, in fact, one of the guys that I first traveled to Australia with, he'd been over to South Africa a few years before, and been on one of the white shark conservation intern programs over there. Yeah. And he'd always talked about it, and I always said, all right, yeah, at some point I'll go and do that. And so at this point I was like, right, well, I haven't really got much else to do at the moment. Let's go and do that. See where that leads. If nothing else, it will just be a great experience. So yeah, I signed up to go over there, initially just for a month, to work with a company called White Shark Africa in Mossel Bay, right. Which is not as well known as the sort of Gansby, Cape Town area for the white sharks, or never used to be. In fact, now it's changing a little bit, but yeah, that's where my friend had been. So that's what I thought, right, I've got some contacts there. He put me in touch with them, and I went out there, like I say, initially for a month, but actually ended up staying a bit longer. So yeah, it was a really great program to be on. We were helping out on the cage diving boat, with sort of guests, taking people out, educating them on shark conservation, and trying to explain that they weren't maybe quite as scary as they're made out to be in the media, and lots of other projects alongside that as well. We were involved with, there was a couple of guys there who were doing sort of longer term research projects, some on the great whites. So there was a lot of data being collected about the great whites in Mossel Bay, and then also some other stuff with the sort of benthic sharks, and tagging smaller juvenile sharks, stuff like even small hammerheads and stuff like that as well. So a few different projects we got involved with there. That was really interesting. In fact, that's where I actually met my now partner, Hannah, who was out there doing her research for her paper back at university. Right. She was out there at the same time, and we met and have never looked back since. But she was using that data from the research that was going on there to do her paper for her dissertation, and then actually she's written another paper on it since, which is just in the process of being published. So it's yeah, quite a special place for us.
Mega. Well, I don't know whether we've spoke since or whether you'd seen it, but we've booked not the same trip because it's at Gansby ours. Yeah. We've booked a similar sort of thing, and it's not an internship. It's almost like a 2-week holiday. They call it volunteering, but you pay for it. But nonetheless, yeah, I'm sure the experience of doing all this will certainly tick a lot of boxes for me, because it's all well and good running this podcast, talking to 60 odd people so far, and listening to all their adventures and actually not having so many yourself. So I'm like so looking forward to it, because obviously last year quite a few decent trips got cancelled for us, and then when you're locked down you can't travel so much, and there's so much around the UK to go and see, but you can only hope that we're on the back of it now, and then I'll get down there and go and have a look at these great whites or anything else that'll be there. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Well, no, I'm sure you'll have an absolutely amazing time, mate. And yeah, if you're down in Gansby, we actually did a few trips down to the sort of Cape Town area. Yeah. Whilst we were based in Mossel Bay, we went down there to do some diving. So, there's plenty of good stuff to see down there. One of the most memorable for me, I think, was we tried to go out and see blue sharks there. I was never successful with that, but diving with the 7-gill sharks out of Simonstown, in the sort of kelp forest there, that was absolutely amazing. I absolutely loved that. And yeah, I would love to go back and do those dives again. So if you get a chance to do them.
Did you have your camera with you then?
Or was it all
So
work?
no, so this was like, I'd sort of, while I was working at different dive centers, I'd sort of dabbled playing around with underwater cameras and stuff that we had for rent at places, and mostly it was just pictures and stuff like that. But when I then decided to go to South Africa to do the Great White Shark Project, I thought, right, I know I'm going to want to film some of this. You know, what's everyone using to film stuff? Oh, GoPros. Okay, I'll get a GoPro. And so that was what I was filming everything on back then, was just on a GoPro.
Yeah.
And I think it's where a lot of people started with that. But yeah, it was really the fact that it was great whites and, you know, other type of sharks. I was like, I have to film this. I have to have some record of this, or, you know, memory. At that point, I was never really thinking I'd still be taking it further with the filming and that sort of thing. So at that point, it was really just for me, and just to show other people back home what it was that I'd seen. So yeah, we'd video everything. We'd take, you know, screenshots of the videos and post them online, and yeah, everyone would be going back home, would be going mad about it, thinking, wow, what is this you're doing over there? It's pretty crazy. So
I often look back, certainly when I'm talking to guests I've had on here, that in my early 20s I had the opportunity to take up diving. There was a lad or bloke that worked on the same production line as I did, and as I was doing my apprenticeship, he was responsible for teaching me a bit of it. And he said, oh, you should come along to our local town. I think it was on maybe the Monday or the Tuesday. We dive in a local swimming pool, come down, have a try dive, 20 quid. And I didn't make it on time. I was like 10 minutes too late, and it was literally far too late. You know, they'd already dished the kit out and done safety briefs. So by the time I got in the water, everyone would be getting out. And I just never managed to either have that £20 again or the time to go again. And it was always one of them, oh, we'll do it next week. And next week never came until 16 years later. And I quite often think and look back and go, what happens if I'd have done that? Maybe I wouldn't have had the time or the money to stay in the sport. Whereas now all my kids are a little bit older. I've got enough money to do what I want, buy what I want, go where I want. So it might have been a negative thing if I'd have got into it. I might have just not been it might not have been sustainable. So I might have sacked it off and never got as far as I'm at now. And I'm only 4.5 years in. It's crazy, isn't it? Same with you. If you hadn't gone travelling or that try dive, you never know, do you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I don't know. I don't think we can look back and say what if. Things just happen as they happen, don't they? But you know, and if you had have got into it back then, you might not have been so into it now. I don't know. So, but,
so what flicked the switch for you to come home then and go, right, I'm going to start doing this as a sort of a career as such?
Well, so it took again a couple of years after that to get to that point. So after I was out in South Africa the first time, I came back, and having met quite a few people out there, you know, I wanted to get back out there as soon as I could. So came back, saved up again, ended up going back out there again just under a year later, and went out for even longer on the second trip, doing the same sort of thing on the same conservation project. And we ended up, you know, going up to do a lot more diving up in Durban area as well, on Aliwal Shoal. And I remember one of the trips up there, we went to a place called it's like a museum for the Natal Sharks Board, which are an organisation that run or are responsible for putting out the shark nets off the beaches around Durban, that are there supposedly to protect swimmers from the sharks. And I'd never really heard of these before, and you know, going up there as part of a shark conservation project, we were all thinking, oh, this is just crazy. Why are they doing this? You know, they're basically just killing sharks to supposedly keep people safe. But it's a bit of a crazy setup, because what they use is gill nets, and they're not a physical barrier keeping sharks away from the beaches. They're literally just gill nets that stretch for, certain lengths of the beach, just to catch and kill sharks, supposedly to reduce the number of sharks in the area, to keep people safer. And there's a lot of controversy about this. A lot of people are in support of it, a lot of people aren't. And me and there's another lad I was out there with called Dan. We thought this was crazy, and we actually ended up meeting a guy called Skylar Thomas, who is a filmmaker. He's made a couple of films before about shark nets in Australia, and he was out there sort of looking into the shark nets there, and we ended up getting to know him pretty well, and he actually asked us to then come back and help him film a documentary about the shark nets, about the Natal Sharks Board, sort of exposing what they were doing and how they were sort of deceiving the public as to why these nets were there and that they were keeping them safe, etc. So, bit of a complicated subject, but yeah. So he asked us to come back and help him out with that, and so that was going to be a year later. We came back to the UK in between, and had got to know sort of through social media a bit David Diley, who you've had on here on one of the podcasts before, and he was running a filmmaking course, underwater filmmaking course, going out to Egypt for a couple of weeks to sort of learn more about underwater filmmaking. So me and Dan signed up to that. We went out there with David, and learned a lot from him. More it's all more about the story rather than just pointing a camera at things and pressing record. So a lot of technique, a lot of storytelling techniques as well, and taking all of that knowledge and skills, we then went back out to South Africa to meet up with Skylar to film this documentary, and we were out there a couple of months filming that. It's still not out yet. He's still in the process of editing it. It's quite a long process for something like that, because it was a pretty much a self-funded project for him. So he's still on with editing that, in between his other work. But hopefully, I don't know, maybe this year that will be out, and it'll show a few people what the sort of truths about the shark nets up there.
Am I right in thinking that the nets, they don't touch the bottom to the surface, so there's enough gaps for someone to swim under and miss it?
Yeah.
And then they're almost like offset in different pieces, so it's not a complete net either, going straight across in places?
Yeah, so it's not a physical barrier that completely keeps sharks out. As I said before, they're gill nets that are just designed to entangle sharks. And yeah, they stretch for certain lengths in sections along the beach. Sharks can swim under them, sometimes over the top, depending on if they've sunk a bit. They're usually held up with buoys. But I think some of the statistics show that it's over half of the sharks are actually caught on the inside of the net, going back out away from the beach.
Really?
Which then immediately tells you, well, those sharks have already been near the beach, and haven't caused any issues. And as well, same as they do in Australia, they use baited hooks and stuff as well. So there's all sorts of controversy. They're actually baiting sharks into the area to catch them, but is that helping to keep them away? No, it's just killing them. And then the other thing is that there's all sorts of other stuff gets caught and killed in there: turtles, whales, When we were there, actually, there was a couple of whales, a baby whale and a mother got caught in one of the nets. It's illegal to go and mess with the nets and cut anything out of them. If you damage the nets by trying to save something, you can be prosecuted. So it's a very strange thing to be going on. But it's sort of become something that's like accepted by people as, you know, that is a management strategy for that. They're not really open to looking at other options. But I mean, luckily that in South Africa and I think in Reunion Islands, they have been over the last few years developing and trialing some different types of barriers. There's, I think, the shark safe barriers, which are sort of tall floating sections that almost imitate kelp to keep sharks from swimming through them. And I can't remember, maybe wrong, but I think they sort of put bubbles up through them as well, maybe, which tends to deter the sharks away. So there are other options, you know, other than the obvious ones of just not swimming in the sea or surfing where there are lots of sharks in the ocean. But that's another another conversation to get into.
I mean, I've watched quite a bit of what David's put on his YouTube channel, and there was a series he was doing in Australia, obviously about sharks, and he was talking about the different means of reporting. So rather than let's go kill, I'm not saying that there's no nets that don't do that or anything else, but you know, you can have like an app on your phone, and if a shark's been spotted in that area or on that particular beach, you'll get a text. And so don't go and swim on that beach. Go on a different beach, perhaps. Or don't swim today. And then there's loads of education around it, in there. You know, coloured water, things like this. You know.
Yeah, definitely. There's there's a lot. There are a lot of other management strategies out there that, you know, could be utilised, but sometimes they tend to just stick to the old strategies, even if they know they don't work, mainly because they tend to make people feel safer. I say feel safer, not actually physically make them safer. Sharks are a really difficult animal to do conservation projects for, because the vast majority of people, having seen sharks in the media, always portrayed as the bad guy, as the enemy, as, you know, evil. They never have that much sympathy for them. No. It's easy to preach to the converted of, you know, people who do love sharks already, but trying to persuade people that you know, either don't think that way or have never thought about sharks in a different way to consider that. So
it's kind of strange, isn't it? Because stuff like Discovery Shark Week, you know, they put loads of different I've not really watched it. We don't have it at home that I'm aware of anyway, but I've watched a lot of the clips, and there's stuff like Mike Tyson fights a shark, you know, so they're putting these on to try and draw people in who might potentially like Mike Tyson, or was it Shaq was getting in with a whale shark somewhere, and he was like, it's bigger than me, and he was absolutely having this panic attack. So people are watching for that dramaticism and that about it. Yeah. Which I found, that's bringing people in to watch a show that they might not normally watch. Whereas if it's David Attenborough, Blue Planet, everyone wants to watch him because everyone's in love with him and all the rest of it. But it's in a slightly different light.
Yeah, I've sort of got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Shark Week. I mean, obviously, you know, anything to do with sharks on TV, I want to watch. But yeah, Shark Week, they get the conservation messages in there somewhere, but it's not always at the forefront of the program. And I guess, you know, that isn't always the point of it. It is just to, you know, get people into to watch them and maybe subliminally put the conservation messages in there, but they do dramatize it somewhat rotten, don't they? So
you need to get that Darren Brown on there, because he's good for subliminal messages, isn't he?
Yeah.
Get him on, and everyone will be like converted. But
yeah,
I don't know. I understand what you mean about the mixed messages from it.
it tends to go in seems to go in phases. Like some years they have a lot more of a conservation message, and scientists on there actually talking sense about stuff and educating people on it, as well as the drama. And then other years it seems to sort of just go a bit more back to just the drama and people just diving with sharks for the sake of it, and just celebrities going in with sharks. I can't say that I would turn down the opportunity to work on one of those shows, regardless of what I think of it. I don't know.
I suppose there's a right and a wrong way, and you don't want to sell your soul to the devil, but if you get some exposure to that kind of work, you might be able to influence, in some respect, the direction it goes.
That's it, yeah, definitely.
So something we've kind of got in common, I'm about to do, as long as this flipping lockdown, pandemic, corona shite doesn't get in the way again, like I did September, October and November. I'm going to do my HSE professional scuba, as it used to be known, HSE Part 4. So was it media, scientific and research it covers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the commercial, as in like engineering underwater, it doesn't cover that.
Yeah.
So what can you tell me about the course that you did, and what can I look forward to?
Yeah, so sort of leading on from doing that work in South Africa, then when I came back to the UK, I wanted to sort of carry on with that, the filming underwater, and obviously working here. Any work that's done underwater, or at least where you're breathing compressed air, has to be covered under. You have to be a qualified HSE diver, and all the work has to be done under their guidelines. No matter what work it is, really, like you say, it's the part 4, or what's now Pro Scuba. It's like the first level of the commercial diving courses, and that covers media diving, research, I think some like shellfish diving and stuff like that as well. So it's basically working underwater using compressed air to get to your place of work, whatever that is. So so I sort of searched around a bit and asked a few people about who they'd used for the courses. Everybody pointed me to Bristol Channel divers, Neil Brock.
That's right.
Who runs the course there? Yeah.
It's good to hear that everyone told you exactly the same as you told me, so it wasn't a wind up.
No, I think it really depends what you want to get into it for. But if you're doing anything to do with sort of media work underwater, Neil is one of the best guys to go with. He's worked as like a HSE supervisor for underwater filming shoots for the BBC and a lot of the big channels for years and years and years. So he knows that side of the industry. So as well as teaching you, the diving skills that are part of it, he also, helps you. He tailors it a little bit more towards that sort of work that you might be doing afterwards. Obviously still covers all of the stuff you should be doing, but sort of angles it in the direction of what would be more useful for you going down the line. So absolutely fantastic course. I don't know why I always thought before I did it, it was like, a really big thing and getting into the sort of commercial diving. But once you actually get started, there's a few things that you have to learn to do differently. And it's all safety stuff. So it's all to do with keeping you safe, having someone on the surface supervising, communications with the surface, communications with each other underwater through, full face masks and underwater comms units and that sort of thing. Wasn't actually as different sort of diving as I maybe expected it to be. But yeah, really, really fun course to do. Very informative. I could definitely recommend doing it with Brocky to anyone that's looking at doing it. So most of what you're doing is in quarries. I think we dove in 2 quarries and down in the harbour at Portland. So yeah, it's going to be fairly cold whatever time of year you do it.
Yeah,
just whether it's more or less cold when you get out or not, because there's a lot of
absolutely
a lot of stuff in between the diving as well. So
well, it's good to hear that, like I said earlier, that everyone you asked for the reasons you were asking, which are very similar to what I was asking for.
Yeah,
he is the one. I mean, obviously, there's not to rule out there's not other companies around the UK that are any.
No, of course.
It's just if you want it for a particular reason and you want him to shove you down that, he'll always be forever be a go-to as well, won't he, for that?
Yeah, definitely.
Particular subject. Which I spoke to. Have you come across Hugh Miller? He works on for the BBC. He was down in Plymouth. He's got like the next garage along to Kieran, who I learnt my CCR course with.
Yeah,
so it was interesting. He said exactly the same about Neil Brock, that the kind of work he works within he's very much can be easily be used as a go-to. I don't mean using him. I'm going to edit this out. It sounds but you know what I mean. If he works in that field, and Hugh Miller's talking about in the BBC, literally send the risk assessments to him to Red Pen and sign off. It just gives you that warm fuzzy feeling that you're going to the right guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wanting to be working somewhat around this media aspect, scientific and research, maybe a little bit, but that's my real interest, is being either behind or in front of, well, not in front of my camera, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm better behind the camera than in front of, don't worry, mate.
Well, what do I want to ask you about it? So, David Diley, when you did some video training with him, or film training, is it important to have an actual video camera like what you've got behind you there, or my stills camera that'll still film in 4K? Would that be ample enough to do something like that kind of course?
Yeah, 100%. Pretty much whatever camera you've got. How David taught that, he's really good with it, and it wasn't so much about having absolutely the best equipment. He was really going down the route of how to shoot the best with what you've got, and how to turn that into something interesting that people want to watch. So it was as much about the story and what you're trying to put across to people or show people as the quality of the footage. So the guys, there was probably, I think, 8 of us or so on the course. 2 or 3 guys had GoPros. A couple of guys had sort of compact cameras, Sonys and that sort of thing. And then a couple of us had slightly more serious cameras. I didn't have this one, the Z-Cam, before. I had a Sony video camera, Sony AX100, in a small Gates housing, which I'd bought sort of the year before to do that, after coming back from South Africa, and that was quite a big investment for me, but that was I wanted to try and make the most out of it, and I still use that camera now. It's fantastic little camera. You can do everything with it. The problem with these bigger setups is often you have to compromise on what you want to shoot underwater. So the setup for macro or wide angle or whatever, you sort of have to tailor your rig to that a bit before you go in. But with that camcorder in the small Gates housing I had, you could do everything from wide angle through to zooming in on macro stuff, all in one setup, which was really good little setup. But yeah, like I said, that it really wasn't so much about the quality of, not that it wasn't about the quality of the footage, but you didn't have to have the best camera. He was trying to teach you how to make the most of what you got, and how to tell a story or show stuff in a way that people wanted to watch and would keep people interested. So
they did ask his advice when I spoke to him, because I find it quite uncomfortable. I don't mind sitting in front of the screen now chatting to you, because my picture's just up in the top out the way. I'm just making sure that the light's right so you can see me. Not that I want you to see me, because who wants to see me? But what I'm not comfortable with is either having my phone in front of me or a GoPro or whatever, and just talking into it, doing your sort of A-roll, you chat over the. It just doesn't. I don't.
Yeah, it's
probably because I'm too busy.
It's not for everyone, mate. It's not for everyone. I'm not a big fan of doing that either. Don't worry. But yeah, no, he he did he wasn't really getting us to talk so much on camera during that. He suggested, and a few of us did it, was, you know, doing a little video diary just for ourselves of talking about what we'd done on each day. I actually uploaded mine on my YouTube. If you want to watch them, I'll send you a link to them.
Tell me now. I'll go and have a look now while we're chatting.
It's just on my YouTube. So Ollie Putnam, and if you look back from a few years ago, there's a sort of daily vlogs that I did of being there. But I didn't really do it sort of, you know, walking around and chatting about stuff. It was more just, you know, sitting down at the end of the day and talking to the camera about what I'd done. It was actually a really good way to, you know, sort of remember the week and remember all the stuff we'd learned. So
I love how I've just gone on. Obviously, I am subscribed.
Yeah, thank you.
And the first person I see is Handsome Jake. I might put him on mine as well, because
Davies. Yeah, that'll be the one we shot about angel sharks in North Wales. I think that one.
He's so much easier to look at than me, I can tell you that. Is that yours, that angel shark? Great white shark breach.
So that was a little project that me and my friend Dan Abbott, we filmed when we were out in South Africa in Mossel Bay. So yeah, that breaching shot is his shot. But yeah, that was a sort of little promo we did for the company to show the breaching trips that they do.
Well, I've come. There's your underwater filmmaking course in Egypt. I find, I like what you just talked about, doing like the daily diary sort of thing. That I'm not comfortable with, but you know, just sort of dicking around, you know, having a bit of a laugh and videoing that as we're walking down, quite ad hoc.
Yeah.
As opposed to sitting down and it being all formal and going, right, this is what I'm going to talk about now. I find that really uncomfortable, but the more sort of natural film bit, and you just kind of smiling and not really taking a note of the camera, I'm more comfortable with. But David was like trying to talk to me or coach me through why I was perhaps feeling uncomfortable, and it was that because I don't walk around holding my phone out in front of me doing like a what do you call it, a video call, FaceTime, whatever. I just literally, I'd ring you or text you and then hang up.
Right.
But most people do that nowadays. Like certainly the kids now, they're all doing it. So it is quite natural. So if someone walks past you, they'll not question what you're doing. So if you forget that and just get on with it, you're probably better. So I'm trying to get more at ease with it, but it's still not.
I almost found it easier to sit somewhere quiet and do it, because then I knew no one was you know, listening. It's
isn't it crazy though? Something we want to do, we can't do. Like you just cannot get your head around doing it. It's the strangest thing for me, that.
Yeah.
But I'll get there one day, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah. But no, have a watch of those. That'll give you an idea of what we were doing over there.
I'm assuming when I spoke to him, I did say, when you are running any more, let me know. But I can only assume that because of how the last 12 months have gone.
Yeah, I don't think he's got any organised at the moment. You know, have a word with him. That might change.
Yeah, I might drop an email actually after.
Yeah, sure.
So what work, on top of training with him, what work have you done with him?
So once I then had my HSC, he's sort of got me in on a few jobs with him, because he did his, you know, quite a few years ago now. So I've ended up working with him quite a few times as, you know, safety diver or, you know, second camera, something like that, on some different projects we did. So this last year we did something with seagrass down in Plymouth. We did another project up in Scotland, filming 360 underwater and on aerial, 360 camera mounted on a drone. And then last month or a couple of months ago, sorry, we did a bit more of a sort of personal project, like a promo for his company, Scarlet View Media. So that was sort of, but it's basically just sort of showcasing what work Scarlet View Media do and services they can offer. So
enough for talking about other people. What are you up to now? Or recently, what have you been up to and promoting?
So this last year obviously has been a bit quieter for the filming work. as we know, it's all been a bit crazy. So a big thing we've done this year, you have me, Jake, and Lloyd on before, telling you about our series we've been filming over in Wales. So sort of start of this year, we'd started talking about it and wanting to just shoot a series for ourselves, and got into the planning stages of it. Jake and Lloyd are obviously based over in Wales, so they know all the best sites over there. And we ended up got a bit of a late start on it because of the sort of lockdown before summer. But yeah, probably from end of July, August, we were pretty busy filming in North Wales, Llyn Peninsula and Pembrokeshire. And that's been probably one of the biggest things we've been doing this year. I've ended up doing the editing for it, so that's been keeping me busy for the last couple of months now, putting together our version of the series that we're hopefully just putting out online for people to watch, showcasing all the diving that there is to do in Wales and some of the amazing things there are to see there. So,
well, I said to Lloyd, if in the middle weekend of the 2 weeks, or any of the 3 weekends, I'm kind of down that neck of the woods, 'cause I don't really know A, if it's going to go ahead, or B, how they're going to run that week, or that 2 weeks. But I said to Lloyd, Cardiff's not a million miles from Pembrokeshire compared to where I am now. So if we can meet up, we'll meet up and go for a dive, even if it's just at Endac or something. But we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to get down there. But
Lloyd's
pick your brains. So go on.
Lloyd's based. He's not based over in Pembrokeshire at the moment. I think he's back a little bit closer to Cardiff. So he'd probably be up for meeting up with you to go to Endac or something like that. But then it's only a couple of hours across to Pembrokeshire from there as well. So but you'll have to talk to him. See.
Yeah, if we finish Friday, I can nip over that evening, can't I? I can spend Saturday, Sunday there and nip back.
Yeah, I actually ended up driving back up to York in the weekend in between mine because I had some stuff on. So that was a long weekend. Like finished the course on the Friday, set off, drove back, and then like late Sunday night set off to drive back down again. So that was a bit crazy, but
sounds minging.
Yeah, you'd be much better staying in that area and getting Lloyd organised with something. Yeah. Well, today I'm sure he'd be up for it.
With you doing the edit, what software do you use is the first question. So two-part of this. And your soundtracks, where do you get them from? If you can tell me.
So Final Cut Pro is what I use for editing. And I sort of started using that because it's not necessarily the best. It's a really good, it's one of the best editing softwares alongside Premiere Pro and a couple of others. At the time when I was getting into it, it was a one-off payment for that to have it for, as long as you want. It was like, I think it was like 200 quid at the time, whereas Premiere Pro is like a subscription-based thing. And after a few years, you end up having paid a lot more than that. But I've got, I edit on Mac and that, so it works really, really well on there.
I'd used Movie Maker for quite a while on Mac.
Yeah.
Which, when I then saw what Final Cut Pro was, obviously slightly better.
Yeah.
Didn't crash as much, could do more with it, but it was virtually the same. The transition was so easy. It was really easy for me, that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I did the same. I used Movie Maker when I was sort of first putting stuff together, and then I decided I need something a bit better than this, and so I moved on to Final Cut. So that's what we're using for that. As for music soundtracks, it's a bit of a tough one, that, because obviously vast majority of music is copyrighted, or you need to license to be able to use it in projects. It very much depends what the project is, if it's a commercial project or not. Often you have to pay for a specific license to use that music for certain things. For stuff I just upload on YouTube, just footage of underwater footage with a bit of music over it, I often use Epidemic Sound.
Right.
They've got quite a good library. That's like a subscription based thing. So you pay it's like £10 a month, and you can use unlimited amount of music to put on your social media channels. So that's quite good. The stuff for Wales Best of the West series, we're still sort of in the process of figuring out what music to use for that, because at the moment it's not really a commercial series. It could get picked up by someone to be used, in which case may have to change up on the music. But often, even just on YouTube, you can find a lot of music that's put out there for people to use for free.
Yeah.
So that can be a good option with like a Creative Commons license. People just upload the music, often to get a bit like you do with photos or videos. You put it out there so that people can see it, use it, to get a bit of a name for yourself. So, and you have to sort through a lot of music to find the good stuff. So there's a few channels. Look up like license free music channels on YouTube, and there'll be quite a lot on there, and it'll just say in the description whether you can use it for this, that, or the other.
I've heard of Epidemic Sound, and I went from Soundstripe that I was using. I went on to Epidemic.
The good thing about Epidemic Sound, you can like pause your subscription as well if you know you're not uploading anything for a few months, because you only have to have the subscription when you upload something to be allowed to use their music sort of thing. Do
you have any bolt-ons for Final Cut Pro that you use?
Yeah, so there's a few things I use. One of the best ones I've got is I don't know if you've shot much sort of low light video, but if you ever end up with like too much noise in the footage, there's something called Neat Video, which is really good for cleaning up noisy video. Then there's a few. I tend not to use LUTs too much, but I've got like a couple of plugins that allow you to put LUTs over the footage, which gives it all a similar look. It's a very easy way of color grading. It doesn't really work very well for underwater stuff. Underwater stuff is a bit too varied in each shot to be able to use that sort of thing for easy editing. Couple of other ones I'm using at the moment. There's like the Zcam plugins for the color grading, but they're really for if you're shooting like log footage to then grade that and bring color back from that. Yeah, that's it really. Not too many other plugins and stuff for it.
I think the transitions are what I probably struggle with, because not too many on there that actually give a more cinematic feel. They're quite, how can I word it, like Microsoft PowerPoint transitions. They're more like that.
I know what you mean. To be honest, I tend to avoid transitions as much as I can. I don't know, like when you first start putting video and stuff together, you think, oh yeah, it needs a transition between this and that. I think the most I do these days is like a sort of fade between a couple of clips, depending what it is, but or just fade out to black and then back in again. Actually, that you need less of those than you think.
Okay.
So
lesson learned. I'll write that. I wish I'd have known about that Neat Video yesterday, because I did. Was it yesterday, the day before? Might be yesterday. I went and did something sort of topside rather than underwater, because obviously I can't dive around here at the minute. And I'd left our house at about 6:30, 7, and it was pitch black. And as I'm walking down, I've got the moon behind me and the sun slightly coming up but not rising, with enough light on my face to pick me up. But only now, even if you watch it on YouTube in 4K, it's still noisy as chuff, and I'm like, I wish I could have done something about it, but the ISO's set so high to get me in that. There's not a lot you can do, is it?
There's
what you just said.
So it is an amazing tool, but there is still only so much it can do if it's proper noisy footage. Sometimes it's just it's lost. Problem is, if you go too far with it, it can start to look blurry, a bit like plasticky almost. It's a weird thing. Have a play around with it though, and there's a few, like, just look for tutorials for it on YouTube as to how to use it. It's pretty easy. Sometimes it can just save the odd the odd shot. I did a video from a couple of years ago when I was out in Mexico diving in the cenotes there in the caverns, and that was obviously very low light stuff there, and I used it a lot on some of those shots to bring them back. Yeah, so definitely has its uses.
We'll see. I'll see how I get on. I mean, I can only try, can't I?
Yeah.
Right, so this underwater whale series, when is it due out? Have you got a date yet? Have you finished it yet?
No, it's not finished yet. Hopefully within the next month or two, we'll be able to put something out. We've got, I think, basically 4 episodes, although we're maybe trying to expand that a little bit more, of the sort of main sites that we went to. We ended up being a bit restricted with it. We'd had a lot more planned for it, but as I said, by the time we got started, it was sort of halfway through the summer, and we were still doing stuff in November. To be fair, still filming stuff at November, start of December, over in North Wales, which was starting to get a bit cold, but not as bad as some other places. But
I suppose not. How do you get on for storage? Because I'm assuming are you shooting in bigger than 4K?
Most of what I'm shooting is still in 4K. I'm possibly upgrading my Zcam to the 6K version soon, or not upgrading, but having a second camera for the housing. But yeah, most of it's 4K. It depends what you're shooting in as well. Most of your sort of consumer cameras will be shooting in something like H.264 or H.265, which compress everything quite a lot, so you can not have so much of a struggle with storage. Some of the stuff I've been shooting recently, shooting in like ProRes and ProRes RAW, like huge file sizes.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, gigabytes of one clip can be a couple of gigabytes. Jeez. Sort of size. But I've got like sort of RAID storage drive on the desktop, which is quite big for keeping a lot of that stuff in. Although even earlier this year, I had to sort of have a clear out of that and move all my older stuff out onto hard drives in the drawer somewhere, and just keep the more recent stuff. So
it's nuts, isn't it? Because I remember getting a 1 gig pen drive at about 15 years ago, and that was a fortune. And a 1 terabyte like steady state drive now is not a lot more in comparison.
I think it's always going to go that way, but yeah, you can get some pretty big hard drives for stuff. I tend to use the RAID setup for the more for the better stuff that I definitely don't want to lose, because it has a backup within itself. As like 2 hard drives inside it, and they've both got everything identical on them. So if one of them goes, it's all still on the other one. You've got to be quite selective with not keeping stuff that you don't really need. Temptation is to just keep everything that you shoot from a project or whatever it is, thinking, I might need it sometime down the line. You probably won't ever get back to using it, or if you do, you'll only use a few of the best clips from that. So, you know, if you can take the time to sort through it and just keep the best stuff then for later, then that's probably the way to go,
I suppose. So looking through your bio that you sent me to put on, the sort of notes at the bottom, you said you'd been picked up by some of the bigger sort of TV channels like BBC and that.
Yeah, so I've had like footage from some of my stuff. I think I had some of my shark footage from South Africa was on Shark Week a couple of times. Just like clips and stuff that have been online, and you just end up getting a request saying, "Oh, we'd like to use this on XYZ." And then I had some drone footage was on. It was the last thing I had on BBC was on like saving lives at sea. So some of my drone footage that I'd had up on YouTube, they asked to use that on there. As full credits on actually as a cameraman on stuff like that, not yet. Still working on that.
No money though. Are they not paying?
It was paid to use the footage. They never offer very much, so you have to try and push them a bit.
if you're not getting a full credit, then at least, you know, I'd sooner have the full credit than perhaps nothing.
Yeah, that's it.
You start to get noticed, perhaps. Because I remember that was one thing that stands out when we had a chat with David Diley. Was it him? I hope it was him, because I'll sound like a knob now. But he used to sit there and he'd pause. He'd like watch the end of all the different shows on the telly, and he'd pause the credits, and he'd be emailing or finding all the different producers and cameramen and all this, and he'd be mouthing them to death to try and get that bit of work or bit of help or direction.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was him. I hope it was, because I'll say if it's not. But it's definitely one of the guests I've had on my podcast.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
No, it's a good thing to do, I suppose. Trying to, you know, get those contacts. I find I'm struggling, although this year has been very different. Sort of start of last year, I was looking at moving down to Bristol to really get into that that world with all the contacts down there. It's, you know, it's quite a big thing, the networking side of that industry. Obviously, this year has been very different for that, and a lot of those networking events haven't really been happening, at least not in person.
Hugh said something like that. He'd travel up from Plymouth because Plymouth was cheaper to live but better for diving. Travel up to Bristol for a meeting, which often wouldn't lead on to anything, and it'd be the walk across the car park. He'd bump into someone and go, "Oh mate, are you free next week?" "Yeah, I am, mate." And then he'd get a job like that rather than the meeting he'd spent all day or week or whatever driving up for. So networking for me is massive. Yeah,
definitely. So, we might maybe looking at moving back down that way this year. Have to see what happens. So my partner Hannah's looking at PhD options for something this year. So maybe making a move for that anyway. So
right, wrapping things up, mate. Is there anything we've missed? Anything coming up next year you want to talk about, or this year, 2021? Have you got any plans?
So plans for this year are probably all a little bit up in the air still. I've been trying to nail down a few trips abroad. Me and Hannah were trying to get out to the Bahamas at some point. That's been a dream of ours for a long time, to go out there. And we actually had an opportunity back in November to go out there. A couple of our friends have got a yacht out there and asked us to go and help them move it from south of the Caribbean up to the Bahamas. We were literally about to book our flights when the November lockdown was announced, and there was no international travel other than for work, and we couldn't really pretend it was for work, even though I would have been filming stuff over there. It felt a bit wrong to do that, so we had to put that off. But hopefully we'll be able to get out and see them at some point this year, and take the new camera out there and get some good footage of the tigers and the hammers.
Awesome. One last question. I see you're all wearing Neptunic stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know them as a brand. I mean, are you sponsored by them or what? Or is it just are they a massive ocean positive thing that you want to promote?
They've supported a few of our projects in the past. So for me, it started all the way back when we were filming that the project about the shark nets in South Africa. So they're actually the manufacturers. They make the chainmail suits.
All right.
That the people use for like the feeding or working with sharks. But then they just do all the sort of clothing alongside it, and they're really good company. Actually, very positive about environmental stuff and especially shark conservation. So they're always interested in getting involved with stuff. And they were supporting our project in Wales as well, actually.
That's mega.
So have a look on their website. We're all on there as part of the Neptunic squad.
Team Handsome. I've seen you all.
Well, at least one of the three is holding up that end. Me and Lloyd always thinking Jake gets on everything, so we're trying to keep up with him.
Is he getting more fan mail? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah, he must be. Yeah.
Oh,
So when we go on the O3 website to buy some stuff, he's the first thing we see when we go on there. So
Like bastard,
we're always ribbing him for that.
You'd think he'd be a right mess, the amount of cream teas he has. He's always on the cakes, isn't he?
I think he keeps pretty active, and his girlfriend Giovanna's really into fitness. She's a fitness instructor, so I think there's no sitting around when you're with her. So
awesome, love it. Is anyone you want to give a shout out to then, other than Neptunic, that supported you?
Well, our project in Wales, we had a few other people supporting us as well. So we had OTS, who are the full face mask manufacturer. They helped us out a bit. O3, who just mentioned as well, they were helping us out. Sunto as well. Sunto UK were supporting us, and we're hoping to do a few more projects with them this year as well.
Nice.
And so a few big names helping us out with that. And obviously it was a completely self-funded project. It took up a lot of our time. So, but we're really grateful for support from those guys.
Yeah, it just makes it that bit easier, doesn't it? It doesn't need to be tens of thousands of pounds, just greasing the wheels and sharpening the pencil sort of thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Just makes
a lot of it
more fun.
Yeah, a lot of it I think was support, product support as well, and tech support for some of it with some of the equipment. So it was very useful to have those guys on board.
Awesome. Right, well, thanks for coming on, mate. I appreciate it.
All right, mate, no worries. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I need to find a better line than that, because on every one I go, I appreciate your time. Because without you, I wouldn't be making an episode, would I? But
no,
I do, mate.
It's all right.
Honestly, you're a legend for coming on.
No problem at all, mate. I've really enjoyed listening to all your podcasts actually since you've been. I wish someone had been doing it years ago, because this is the stuff that a lot of us are really interested in listening to, and you're putting out all the content for us to keep us interested. So
nice one, pal. All right, buddy. Take
cool.
it easy.
All right, bud. Well, thanks so much.
No worries, mate. Ta-ra.
Thanks very much to this week's guest for sharing their stories and interesting tales about the underwater world. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I did recording it. For more information on this episode, take a look at the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and follow us on Instagram for the latest news. Thanks again to Northern Diver International and those of you who have supported me through Patreon. Take care, and I'll see you on YouTube.